I have, in the past couple of weeks, been talking with people about their first quilts, the first quilts they made. That reminded me, my first quilt is up in this bedroom in the cedar chest, wrapped in tissue paper like you're supposed to do. I thought, well, maybe it would be interesting to some new quilters to see the first quilt that I made and an early quilt. I started quilting in the 70s, and in the late 70s, I believe, I decided I wanted to make a quilt, and of course, not knowing what I'm doing, because my mother didn't quilt, but I wanted something for our bed, which was a good size, either queen or king size bed. So I found a book, and it had a pattern for a Barbara Frietchie star, which is what this star is on this quilt. And this is the Barbara Frietchie star, I believe. And I thought, that's great. I will just go find some fabric. At that time, I don't know that there were fabric stores around, but I went to downtown Indianapolis, and Block's was a department store. In the basement, they had fabric. I bought a whole bunch of blue. I bought this, like a cream-colored muslin. And this, it was a print of blue and sort of pink flowers. I don't think it's too pretty right now, but when I bought it, I thought, well, these will go very nicely together. And so, at that time, there were no rotary cutters. We had to use cardboard from cereal boxes or whatever to make our templates. And I believe that I sewed the pieces together with my sewing machine. I'm not really sure about that. It was a while ago. I did hand quilt this, and I luckily put a date on it, and the date is, I put my name on it. I did it with embroidery floss, and I put 1981. That's all I put. My name and the date. And I believe it's king size, so it's huge. I believe that I used, well, I know I used it and all, but after I got it done, I was pretty proud that I had this quilt done. It was a huge thing, and I hand quilted it, and the quilting was very nice. And then I thought, why in the world did I just use one blue fabric, one floral fabric, and one background? It's the boringest quilt I think I have ever made. But I was just learning, and that's what we do when we're learning. Sometimes you just start with what you have and make something, and I think then you learn from what you have made. So I don't use this quilt ever. I do keep it just because it's hand quilted. It was my first quilt, and it means that it was my first quilt. We all learn from that first example that we make, and that's good. Another early quilt that I made is back here. I think this one was a couple of years later. I wanted to make a quilt for one of my sons, I think, and I wanted to do like a child's quilt, and I wanted to do applique. I didn't know a whole lot about doing applique at this time. This one was made in 1983, I think. I'll have to look. I think it's 1983. And I wasn't sure how to do applique. I didn't really have a pattern. After I did my first quilt, this is the first quilt, and probably first and only quilt I used a pattern for. I decided early on that a lot of my quilts I want to either take a pattern and do my own thing with it, or make my own pattern. So this is a quilt that I decided I would make the blocks pretty good size. These look like they're probably 12-inch blocks. And I found a coloring book that had simple pictures in it. Simple pictures of an airplane, or a rabbit, or this teddy bear. And so I just used those pictures to make the patterns, and I used a satin stitch to go around this applique. I don't think that I used fusible. I think I turned under the edges. You could do something like this very quick and easy with some sort of fusible, but I didn't. And I kind of liked it when I got, well, I did like it when I got done. I'm not sure if I would do some things different, of course, today. But I think if you are looking to make a quilt, or if you've made one or two and want to try something new, then this is another good idea. If you're interested in applique, find a simple coloring book, get some pictures out of there, and I don't know if I'd use a satin stitch because that took a while, but you could just use a blanket stitch and a little bit of fusible, and you'd have a nice kid-size quilt. So these are two of my very early quilts, and I thought it might give some of you a little, some ideas on making your own quilts or showing off your first quilts. On my newsletter at Presto Avenue Designs, this month, in the month of July, there's going to be about 3 people, I think, that are showing off their first quilt. And so, if you'd like to do that, we sure do welcome you to join in. You'll have to send me a photo of your quilt and maybe a story about your first quilt. Thanks for watching my first quilt examples.